Welcome back to Haven Within Stronger Minds, Better Futures. I'm Stithi, a sophomore at Valencia High School, and this podcast is part of my Girl Scout Gold Award project. Through conversations with professionals, I explore different aspects of mental health that impact teens and our communities in real, everyday ways. This space is about understanding what supports mental wellness, not just through therapy and research, but through connection, environment, and even companionship. Today's episode highlights a unique and powerful area of mental support, the role of dogs in emotional well-being. From reducing anxiety and stress to providing comfort during difficult moments, trained dogs can play an incredible role in supporting mental health. But what does it actually take for a dog to become a therapy dog? And how does proper training make a difference? Joining me today is Miss Bailey, a certified dog trainer who owns the business Noah's Ark Dog Training. She's a therapy dog evaluator. With extensive experience working with both dogs and their handlers, she helps teams build the skill, trust, and temperament needed to provide safe and meaningful support. She provides basic dog training with therapy dog classes and works with the Yorba Linda, Fullerton, and Orange Park and Recreation. Thank you so much for joining us today on this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm happy to be here.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you, for everyone who's wondering, what is a therapy dog and how does that differ from a service dog or emotional support animal, especially in places like schools?
Thank you, Studi. That's one of my favorite questions. A lot of people don't understand about therapy dogs and they think it's a service dog, but there is a difference. So a therapy dog is a dog that you train, you get certified, and then it's your dog, and then you will take it to visit people or in hospitals or schools, and you're sharing your dog with them. Service dog is a dog that's only for you, which is trained to perform a specific task. So, you might have seen guide dogs, like the dog helps them for their sight. An emotional support dog is a dog that someone needs because they have a little bit of anxiety, and then those dogs aren't required to be trained. Usually you're just bringing your dog, your doctor writes you a note that says you have to have that dog. So
Thank you so much for telling us the difference about that, because I know a lot of people, they mistake one for the other, and I think it's really important to know that difference.
Right, because a therapy dog, they'll just say, is any kind of a dog that helps you. But yes, there's the three categories, so that there's different definitions.
Why do therapy dogs work so well with teens dealing with anxiety, depression, high stress, or other issues like that?
Well, therapy dogs, the ones that are certified are very calm, and they have a really good temperament, and they love people. So when they are brought into a stressful situation or event, like sometimes they have for schools, they'll have a stress event where, the kids are taking tests and they're very stressed out and they just need a little break. So people will bring their therapy dogs in, and the dogs have a calming effect. So when you pet a dog, and when you pet your dog, you always feel good. It's a drug that's released. It's called oxytocin. It's a natural drug, and it kind of just covers your body and it just makes you relax. Also, other hormones are released, serotonin, and so it just calms you right away. And it gives the person who's feeling that stress, it helps them to relax. Plus, it takes them away from, that stressful thing. They forget, it's a break in their day. Also, sometimes like teens that have some mental issues, or even, children, a dog is not ever going to be mean to you. It's just, it's there. It doesn't judge you, and you're talking to it, and the dog, it's just there, and it's always happy to see you.
Yeah, I definitely agree about how they can be there during high stakes testing time for students, because at my school we had therapy dogs come during AP testing time. And I think that was really helpful for a lot of students. It helped them lower their anxiety for the test itself. What kind of temperament does a dog need to be a good fit for working with teens or just little kids or anybody in general?
Well, dogs need to have a good temperament, what is good, but they need to be calm, and they shouldn't be reactive. They can't be, too excited. I mean, reactive could mean aggressive, which you think of a dog biting, But an excited dog is also reactive, so that wouldn't be a good temperament. But it's a dog that is calm, that you have trained, that will listen and is healthy too. They have to be in good health, because if people are petting it, they can't pet a certain area and they don't want to, pet a sick dog. So they have to be very calm. There are temperament tests, but really we don't do that. We just test the dog to see if they can be calm, that they like people, and that they sit, that you can pet them. So it's not really hard, but if a dog is growling at me, then he probably isn't going to be very good, right? Not all dogs could have a good temperament. Some of them might, you could pet them a little bit and then they might not really enjoy it. So it has to be one that's really easygoing and it loves attention and it'll be petted all day. But most likely you're probably thinking of a golden retriever and labs. Those are very good candidates for therapy dogs.
I didn't really know about how for reactiveness they need to not be excited too, because I know a lot of people that think that their dog, as long as it's not aggressive, they think that would be a good fit. But I think it's interesting that and important, as you said, that they need to also not be too excited. They just need to be calm.
Right, because reactiveness, could be excited and it could be aggressive, and we kind of we have to treat those the same. We do behavior modification. I have worked with dogs, and we use counter conditioning to help them be more comfortable. So you can. It doesn't mean if your dog is a little excited, it doesn't mean they can't ever be a therapy dog, but it might take some additional training for behavior modification, we call it. Or maybe you have to repeat the class, but there is hope for your excited dog.
And that kind of goes with what I was going to ask you next about, are there dogs that are well trained but still not suited for therapy work, and how can handlers tell?
Good question, because the tests that we do actually are based, the therapy dog groups will test it's based on the good canine, which is the measure of can the dog sit, stay, and how's his reaction to another dog, and can he be left with somebody else. That's the test that we have, but it's not the best measure of the dog, how he will do, but that's the test we have, so we kind of work with that. My dog might sit, stay, and maybe he will sit there when I try to pet him, but if I pet him and he's moving away, that's probably not a good candidate, because this dog doesn't really like to be petted. And then you look for body language, if the dog's yawning or licking his lips, even if he's sitting there, that might not be a good candidate, because why is he licking his lips? I mean, that's an anxiety. So even the dog performs the command, sit, stay, if you look, he might not be comfortable. And so the thing is if my dog isn't comfortable, then what happens if I take him somewhere and someone's petting him? He could snap at them. So I have to look at the body language. And also sometimes dogs might have a day where they are maybe a little stressed, and maybe they're a good therapy dog, but there might be an occasion that they aren't good that day. In that case, you just kind of go home. But if a dog if he's growling or something, sitting there, then I'm definitely, he's not passing if he's growling at me. Sometimes if you reach down to pet him and they kind of go like that, maybe they're not biting you, but it's almost that's kind of a level 1 on the bite scale, we say, even if they don't puncture you, but they're not comfortable with you petting them. So those dogs, maybe they need a little bit more work, or maybe they're not a good candidate.
I think a lot of people, they don't really see it from the dog's perspective, but thank you for telling us how a dog could feel uncomfortable too, and that might not make them a good candidate. Because I think a lot of people, they just think about how it could impact humans, but dogs could be uncomfortable too.
Plus, in a certain situation, if it was a stress day, at a school, some dogs would be really stressed there and they might not do well. It's too much activity. So, I mean, it could be that maybe in a nursing home, they're fine. They're just, nobody's moving fast. But different situations also are, one of my dogs, this is my dog Cutter. One time he was at a stress event and at a school, and he was like, goodbye. And he was trying to get out of there right away. He was very stressed out. So, I mean, that didn't really work for him, but otherwise he can do other events. My other dog, Roxy, she's 12. She's been doing it a long time, and when she first began at 5, maybe she couldn't have sat through 150 people like at a school petting her, but one event that we had like 150 kids and she was petted by that many children and she was okay. So sometimes with experience too, it does matter.
150 kids is a lot, so that's really amazing that she sat through that. So you help prepare dogs for the Canine Good Citizen test. So what does that test involve and why is it so important as a foundation?
There's different therapy dog groups and some require the Good Canine Citizen. Not all of them, but the other therapy dog groups, the test is kind of based on that. So the test involves like they have to sit and stay and then you have to walk away like 20 feet and come back, which is kind of funny because you never leave your dog when you're visiting. So it's just kind of a measure to see how well the dog can, behave. Also, you have to call your dog from 20 feet. You have to have your dog sit while somebody approaches and pets them. They can't move, jump up. And another part of the test is reaction to another dog. If you approach a dog with your dog, the dog can't jump on the other dog. And then there's a part too where you would give your dog to somebody and they take them for 3 minutes. And it's supposed to evaluate if your dog is okay. Like if something happened to you visiting, somebody had to take your dog, would your dog be okay? The Good Canine is through American Kennel Club, which, a lot of people like to do that test because they're involved with American Kennel Club. They do, events or agility or trick training. Or they have a purebred, so they like to get that test. But it's not always required, but it's a measure. It's not the best measure, but it's the one we have, and so that's what we use. But not all therapy dog groups will do the Good Canine. Like one group, they have a test and 3 observations where they the first test they watch, the dog is walking, they make sure the dog's not pulling, and then they have the dog sit and you're petting him to see how the dog interacts with people. And then they would do 3 observations with the dog team getting petted. So that's a whole different kind of a test, but there's many therapy dog groups, so they're all different.
Thank you for elaborating on that because I never actually knew how dogs can become therapy dogs. So I think it's really interesting to learn about that process.
And I should add that they do have junior handlers too. So if you are not 18, you can, be a junior handler, but you'd have to go with either like your parent has to be a member of the group or you have to go with a person that's kind of your mentor or something that to make sure you can't just go by yourself. So but that's kind of good.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would want to try that.
Yeah.
So what parts of the CGC training tend to be the most challenging for dogs and handlers, especially in like busy or emotional environments?
To train your dog, I think the hardest part is distractions. There's so many distractions and the dog has to stay focused. And there's, other dogs there and they're interested in the other dog and they don't want to stay. That's a hard part to just keep them focused. Another hard part is some dogs like pull. So when you do walk your dog, the dog can't pull you. You have to, the leash should be relaxed. So it's hard because dogs like to pull. They love, smelling everything. So that part is really difficult. Sometimes too, the reaction to the other dog. 2 teams approach and their dog has to sit. And sometimes the dog is so excited to see the other dog and that's really hard, to train them that they need to sit. I think the hardest thing is the supervised separation, which you would have to give your dog to me and then you step out of sight for 3 minutes. And that is, very hard because we don't leave our dogs. And that's the hardest. My one dog, Putter, he cannot pass that because he will have anxiety if I leave. But funny thing is I tested this one dog for a Good Canine and I had, a bag and I had treats on it, and then the handler went out of sight, and it was a Doberman, it's a big dog. So the dog was sitting, and then he started trying to go after my treats. It was kind of funny because, and not mean, but just trying to get my treats out. And it was just funny because the dog was like really well trained, but he still was going after my treats. So that part, that's I think is the biggest thing, is the separation. Because after COVID, we never leave our dogs, so they can't be left with somebody. They just have anxiety.
Mm-hmm. And my dog too, she has like a lot of anxiety, I think, because in like the past few years we've like gone on vacations and stuff, and she just like she misses us a lot, and then when we come back she gets so excited. But I do understand what you meant by like the distractions, because our dog too, she gets so distracted, and like she knows how to do all the tricks, but then if she's outside where there's distractions like squirrels or something, then it's impossible to get her to do anything.
Right, and I was going to say, because you said your dog was a Malamute.
Yes.
Because, that's another point about therapy dogs, is we don't discriminate. You can have any breed can do it, except for only wolf or coyote hybrids, but that's only because the rabies are not effective, because the dog has to have vaccines. But any dog is a candidate.
I think that's really cool. Once a dog passes the CGC, what's the next step towards visiting places like schools or like mental health programs?
Okay, so then actually the therapy dog test is what they would need to pass. So the good canine is another test, and it's not the therapy dog test. So if you're trying to become therapy dog team, there's different groups. So some don't even require it, but so you would take, you contact that therapy dog organization. Like there's Alliance of Therapy Dogs, Bright and Beautiful, there's Independent Therapy Dogs, there's Pet Partners, OC Animal Allies. So you contact them, and then you'd make arrangements with them to have your dog evaluated, and then once your dog passes, you would have to, pay the membership dues. And usually you have to make sure your dog is vaccinated, it has a fecal, so it has to be up to date. And then you would get like an ID card, you get a little, whatever their little, sometimes it's a heart or a bone that your dog wears, but you're certified with a group, and you maintain that every year. So you have to pay every year, you pay fees. And then some groups you have to visit like every month or every 3 months, and some don't care, you don't have to visit, but some groups make you log it. If you don't log it, then you get an email that says, you forgot to log it.
There are several therapy dog organizations out there, so how should handlers choose the right one if their goal is working with teens?
So there's different therapy dogs and groups, and then some of them will focus on certain things, like some people say, I want to go to CHOP Hospital. Well, they have a certain therapy dog group, so that would be Pet Partners. So I have to contact Pet Partners because I can't, like I'm with Alliance, I can't go to CHOP. They won't accept my therapy dog. It's kind of, because that's the one they work with. So I would contact that therapy dog group, and I would say, I want to work with teens, and then, do you work with teens? Like the way that our groups do mostly is that we have schools contact us, and then, so like if you said, I want to work with teens, I would say, well, we do have events at high schools, but I mean, we do have colleges that we visit regularly, but that's what you'd have to investigate or interview. Like if you say, I want to go to the John Wayne Airport, then you would have to go with OC Animal Allies. So or LAX, if you want to go there, you love the airport, right? Then you Alliance. So you kind of research where they go. And there's different ways that they will give you the events. So like some therapy dog groups, they send you an email, that's it. Other therapy dog groups send out an email to you, and then you respond, and they kind of coordinate it. Others, they have a website, you go look on, leads. So it's all different, but I can't really say there's one that will particularly focus on the teens that I know of. But
I think that's still important, and since they can go to schools, I think that's a great way for teens to be like exposed to therapy dogs and to lower their stress. So yeah.
yeah, some schools, I mean, will allow dogs. Other schools like aren't. I was a teacher, so they don't. They're not really like as happy to have the dogs there. So it just depends on the school districts. That they're like. You'll notice certain school districts are more always having these events than others.
What kind of preparation or screening do these organizations do to make sure that dogs and handlers are ready for mental health settings?
If you're certified, you have your certification, basically you're you're on your own, right? So if you're tested and you pass the test, then they just assume that you are ready. There's not, no one's going to say you can't go, but we have had events where there was kids and there was things going on, and the dogs that went, like sometimes the dogs ended up, snapping or just maybe, lunging, and that wasn't, and you might get in trouble. If you pass the test, you go. It's like, that's it. You're just.
So that's kind of like the final step for you starting to go places with your therapy dog.
Yeah, well, after you get certified, the reason that you get certified is because they carry insurance. So like they'll have like $1 million insurance in case something happens. Like if I go somewhere and my dog bites somebody, then they can't sue me. So that insurance, the therapy dog group has the insurance. So that's why you get certified. And sometimes though, if my dog bit somebody, then they might, like, I would get dropped from my, if your dog bites somebody, that's it. If your dog bites somebody or has ever bitten, they're not eligible to be a therapy dog. If they scratch somebody, that's treated as a bite. So you can get like in trouble or suspended also for that. But they won't always just, fire you, I say. If your dog, like if you jumped up and scratched, you would get in trouble maybe, but they won't end your membership. But if your dog did bite or, then you're gone. But no biting, that's not eligible.
One thing believed is that handlers should be trained to read dog body language. So do you think that this should be required in therapy dog programs, especially if the dogs are going to go other places and meet with other people?
Alliance of Therapy Dogs actually has a little brochure of body language for dogs, and when I do my group classes, I teach it. Plus, when I evaluate, or anytime I do a therapy dog evaluation, like for people, and where I teach them, like it's kind of a training, and I'm always teaching them about the body language, because groups focus on it, but they should, because I'm always telling them, okay, your dog's doing, licking his lips, that's anxiety. If he's yawning and he's not tired, if he's panting, it's not hot. Those are all signs, because if they're showing anxiety, then, if somebody's petting them, they might get bit or snapped at or something, because that's what you have to look at. Or, if the dog is crawling under the chair, you're kind of, okay, maybe he doesn't want to visit, right? Or if he's trying to flee. But yeah, that's definitely, I have to look at. Since the pandemic, it's worse. I know you probably say, we're done with the pandemic, but we still see dogs, because we haven't gone back to the habits, like we're still staying home, people are working from home, we're not getting out as much, and our dogs still have anxiety. And you're seeing more dogs that are reactive and that are rescues, and people are giving them up because they have anxiety. But they need to definitely, like all the therapy dog groups need to more focus on that body language.
How does one balance supporting teens emotionally while also protecting the dog's mental well-being?
So when you do visit, like if I'm going to an event that is a high school event where there's going to be teens, what I do is when we plan an event, I coordinate with the person that is planning it. And so we have to make arrangements, how many kids are there going to be? We have to limit 3 kids at a time, maybe for a couple minutes. But we can't just have 150 kids come pet the dog right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure the dog is not out in the heat or rain, they have to be covered. If it's really hot, they need, covering. You're having therapy dogs, they need water, they need shelter to hang out in. And also, they're only going to work for, like some dogs work for an hour and that's it. And my dog, Roxy, she probably couldn't work past an hour. She's 12. And sometimes some dogs will work 2 hours. But therapy dogs groups will have a limit, like maybe 1 or 2 hours. And maybe they say just once a day. They can't do like 2 events. And then the dog will need a break, but you have to be protective and watch over your dog and make sure that the coordinator who's planning it at the school doesn't just let their 300 students out on, 3 dogs, which has happened before. So that's why, but as you learn, you're coordinating with the person doing the event so that, you don't want that to happen. And then just make sure too, like it can't be really noisy either, because that would add stress to the dog. So, there shouldn't, if you're having a big musical event, then probably don't want the therapy dogs there because that's very stressful. So, it has to be, it doesn't have to be so super quiet, but it should be a little bit, just relaxing.
And that goes with, again, how I said that, I think a lot of people don't think about how the dogs feel and they just focus on, how the humans would feel. But at the end of the day, it's the therapy dogs who need to also feel comfortable to be able to help the humans as well. So yeah, that's really important. What kind of impact have you seen therapy dogs have on the emotional regulation of humans or their mental health?
I mean, it's an example of an older person that was in a memory care, but when I brought my dog, the people said, oh, he's not going to talk or anything. He doesn't talk. He has dementia. And he was petting my dog. And then, when you take him in, you start asking, did you have a dog? And, you tell him about your dog. And he said, oh, yeah, I had a dog. And he started talking and he never talks. And so, that's what you hear. People will, or after you left, you'll hear, yeah, they were talking about your dog when you left. And they get, maybe they're not sharing when you're there, but when you leave, they'll tell the staff. But one interesting thing about when we do visit with the dogs in the library, that there's this one, she's an adult, but she's kind of like a kid, and she comes in and reads. And so, she really, that's her outlet, because she's, an adult, but she doesn't have social skills. And so when she comes to the library and reads with the dogs aren't treating her bad, because they're just listening. And I'm sure other people might look at her strange because it's you're an adult, but the dogs aren't judging her. And so she's reading and she's practicing her reading skills, and she's enjoying and she's connecting with people they're too. The people are nice, and it's making her self-esteem build, because of course out there in the world, they're probably not going to be as nice, but with the dogs, they are, and the handlers too.
That's so touching. And I really like how with therapy dogs, it doesn't matter your age, because anyone can talk to them and it can have such a positive impact on them. So that's really amazing.
Yeah, dogs don't judge. Well, all dogs, right? So they're always happy to see you, right? They don't care.
So what's a common misconception about therapy dogs in places like schools that you wish that more people understood?
Well, most of the thing about therapy dogs is a lot of people get confused because they think that it's my service dog or my emotional support dog, but it's not. A therapy dog is a dog that I'm going to bring to visit people and, kind of reach out to them and help them to, relax and, bond with my animal for the little bit of time. But a therapy dog is not a service dog, so I can't bring my therapy dog into the store. He's not a service dog. But that's what I wish people are I can't go to Starbucks with my dog. I'm not supposed to, because, he's not my service dog. I don't need him. Sometimes they ask you, when you bring the dog in, they think that, you're training him to come stay with them, but it's my dog.
And we went over that in the first question itself, like the difference. So I think, a lot of people, they just don't understand the difference. But thank you for clarifying that before itself and right now too, because I think that's really helpful to understand. And the last question is, if someone's listening and thinking, I'd love to do this, but I'm not sure we're ready, what's the best first step towards like making your dog a therapy dog?
Well, you can contact me, Noah's Ark Dog Training. But I would always say the first thing is you don't have to take a class. But, some people train their dogs. I know they watch YouTube, right? And then you call me because basic training. So my dog needs to sit, stay, come when called. And, I have to start there. So be it take a class, go to PetSmart, whatever, go to, Park and Recs. Do private, do it yourself. The dog needs to be basic trained. Sometimes that's enough, if your dog is good at doing basic sit, stay, and walking on leash, you could go from there maybe. So yes, he needs to be basic trained, but maybe like your dog needs more training. So then you kind of seek out in intermediate training, because if I want to take the good canine, my dog will have to be more intermediate, where he's sitting for longer, staying for longer, and being trained with more distractions. You don't have to take a therapy dog class. I offer them, and I usually do the test at the end. But your dog, you're looking at intermediate training. And also you can Google, therapy dog groups. So then you go on the websites, do I like Bright and Beautiful? They go to Placentia Library. Maybe, I want to go to, as I said, the hospital. So then I look, that's a certain therapy dog team. So I look into their evaluation. What does my dog need to do? Or what qualifications does my dog need? But I look at the test, and then I prepare my dog for the test. I might just ask my friends, can you come pet him? Or I go to Home Depot, and I tell people, I'm training my dog for therapy. Can you pet him? And I get practice. And then I just Google therapy dog groups, and I go on their websites. So all the groups are different. And some are easy, and some are very, harder. And some take a long time. So
thank you for clarifying that. So I wanted to ask you about how a lot of people, they think that if their children are like having any issues, then they can just like give their child a dog, and that will fix like whatever issues are going on, because they'll like bond. So what is your take on that?
So that's a really good point. And kind of backtrack about the therapy dogs, like some children's homes where they have severe emotional issues, like kids, like that home, is probably not the best place that I would visit with my therapy dogs. So some kids, they would have outbursts. Those kids might not be candidates to have a therapy dog visit. But some dogs might be, they might be so well even tempered that they could. But that, like, I would steer away from. So with a kid, like an emotional, somebody that has an emotional or some kind of an issue, a lot of times, since I'm a dog trainer, they want to train their kid to be with, they want to get a dog. I know dogs and kids don't always understand each other, because kids move fast and dogs have teeth, and kids don't understand that, they can get bit. Dogs aren't always great when you get them. They're not like, you don't know like their temperament either. You get them as a puppy, and then the kids, chasing them around, that's not the best thing. Kids and dogs need to be supervised. Plus, your kid's not going to take care of the dog. You are. So it's kind of like, if you want to get a dog and you're taking care of it, if you have a kid that has emotional outbursts, you can think that, he's going to be doing that. And plus you think, I'm going to get an Australian Shepherd, and then that dog's chasing your kid because that's what they do. So yes, not necessarily would I recommend it all the time for children that do have a little, like are a little shy, or, have a little anxiety. Like I was shy as a kid. So if I have a dog, my dog's my friend. So he's he's helping me build my self-esteem because he's hanging out with me and he's, I'm taking care of him. I'm learning, I can, feed him and I'm learning responsibility. So in that way, I think dogs are great. But for really emotional, severe, not so much. But I have to be the advocate for the dog. But that's a really good question.
And I think growing up, I've also been like someone who's like more stressed. And I definitely think that like my dogs, the first dog that I had when I was like around middle school, or not middle school, around elementary school, she definitely helped me a lot, especially during COVID. I was like so lonely, and that definitely helped me like just have someone to talk to in general. And then the dog that I have right now, high school can definitely be really stressful. So just like being around her, being able to like show my affection to her, it definitely helps me feel a lot better.
Yeah,
So,
plus you walk them, it's great
Yeah.
exercise, you're out there, you're walking your dog and someone comes over, oh, can I pet your dog? I mean, and then you meet people because of your dog.
Yeah.
The first dog I had that was Buffy, she would like always, hey, I gotta meet you, and we were kind of shy, so we always met people because of her. So yeah, the dog, can help you to connect with other people, definitely. But I think that's great when people have, of course, they have dogs as pets, but yeah, for the kids that are, not really calm, that's probably not the best thing, but they can maybe visit therapy dogs maybe for a little short period.
So, as we wrap up today's conversation, I really hope that this episode helped the audience see just how powerful the human and animal bond can be. Whether it's through a certified therapy dog, visiting a school, or simply the comfort of your own pet at home, animals can play an incredible role in supporting our emotional well being. A huge thank you to Miss Bailey for sharing your expertise and insight on what it takes to train therapy dogs and for the important work that you do in strengthening communities through connection and compassion. If you enjoyed this episode of Haven Within, Stronger Minds, Better Futures, be sure to follow and share it with someone who might benefit from learning more about mental health in new and meaningful ways. Remember, you're not alone. Support can come in many forms, and sometimes healing has 4 paws. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.